welcome.
Thank you.
Yourself,
Thank you very
Lipo.
much, Chief Executive.
No, local, all of you. Thank you for your support throughout and Afghanistan humanitarian situation, refugees and migrants, and internally displaced people, in returnees. It's a story of all of it, and what has made it for us possible to respond in a timely manner. It has been the support that we have received from UNHCR, UNOCHA, IOM, and other international agencies, which I want to express my gratitude to the work that you have been doing, and UN as a whole in humanitarian response, and also your colleagues on the ground, which through different mechanisms and platforms we work together, and I think these coordinating mechanisms have proved efficient and effective, and thank you for supporting us in being with us. Millions of refugees outside Afghanistan, 6 million, 5 million in 2 neighboring countries. We are also grateful to the host nations, and through those trilateral mechanisms which exist, which UNHCR is part of it, we have been able to address the issues related to our citizens in these host countries. But welcome, and good to see you again, and thank you for coming and visiting us now. And later on in the roundtable that we're going to have, all the ministers and relevant ministries will be represented, and you will see that from when we talk about returnees from immediate response to the reintegration process, there are effective mechanisms in place. I'm not saying that everything is rosy around. This is not the area that we are talking about. But at the same time, in spite of all the challenges that you are faced, in the United Nations is faced with around the world, to maintain a focus on Afghanistan, this is, I want to thank you, Mark, and Secretary General Guterres, and all colleagues in the UN for their attention towards Afghanistan, and also Ambassador Yamamoto, Toby Lanzer, and other colleagues which are on the ground. They are part of all of us, and thank them at the same time.
Thank you very much, Chief Executives. I'm the spokesperson of the two of us to begin with, but it's a joint mission. I'd like to stress that. Yeah. And I'm very happy, if I may spend a word on it, that we're traveling together both here and in Pakistan after that.
Okay.
Because I think your last point, that in spite of all the crises prevailing in the world, we should not forget that important humanitarian issues have to be addressed and resolved and linked up with development here in Afghanistan. This is why we're also traveling together too, and we've done it in other places as well, to really flag the importance of international support and attention. And we're very much looking forward, by the way, to the Geneva conference and to contributing to the efforts of the governments to seek support, to maintain that international support. So definitely this is a very important focus of our joint mission. And if I may add, Chief Executive, to thank you for your support, for your kind words, but also for the important work that you are doing to try and address displacement. As you said, millions of Afghans are still abroad. I would, I sometimes, try to add up all the different groups of people, group of Afghans that are not in their homes. You easily get to 8 million between internally displaced refugees, then people that are outside for other reasons. So it's an issue that is vital for the future of the country. So we want to continue to contribute. Just to say that I have also been by myself before coming here to Iran. It was, in spite of the complexities there, of the political situation, it was a positive mission, and the Iranian authorities recommitted to treating Afghan refugees in particular in the appropriate manner, very inclusive manner, and the efforts that they are making to document, to regularize, just like in Pakistan, I think is something that merits attention and support, because it is really useful for how we will manage in the future, or you will manage in the future, the movement of Afghan populations in the region. And I also want to flag, still on my side, 2 points more. Maybe one, to say that we also observe with great interest the efforts that are being made by Pakistan and Afghanistan to have dialogue on different matters, including refugees. I was happy that there's a working group in the EPAPS that is devoted to that. I think this is positive, and we stand ready to contribute in whichever way possible. We have our own trilateral arrangement that you mentioned, but this is a more political forum. We understand the importance. We are ready to contribute. And finally, and this is certainly something Mark would like to say much more, we are also very happy that internally you are focusing on solving issues of internal displacement, but also of integration of those coming back.
Yes.
We work closely with your Minister of Refugees and Repatriation, and there we work, at least I speak for UNHCR, as part of a UN effort to support the government in linking up the initial humanitarian assistance with development and addressing the root causes. Insecurity, first of all. We heard the interesting briefing from the SRSG this morning, but also drought and poverty and other factors that are causing displacement.
Especially drought was a serious issue, has been a serious issue, which has caused displacement.
So thank you also for arranging the round table. I think it's a very good approach.
Well, Filippo has covered all the ground. We try to be interchangeable, so thank you very much for that. The thing I would just like to reinforce is this is my first time here as a UN official, but coming here in other capacities, what I've always been keen to try to encourage is to try to make sure all your external partners are really working in ways which help you solve the longer term issues, don't just deal with the short term symptoms.
That's true.
And you talked about Geneva, and we're both coming to Geneva, and we hope that, for example, on the drought, we can find ways to help you deal with that, which is recognizing that the underlying problem really is a poverty problem. And the response needs to be contributing to solutions, not creating new dependent populations. And working behind the leadership of the government is really the way to do that. And if we can make, because there's more money available from the international community to help on the drought, and the trick is to make sure that it's contributing to sustainable solutions, not just dealing with the short-term symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. This is part of our policy in strategies, in the spirit of working together to turn this into a developmental issue as soon as it is the conditions allows it, and reintegration into the mainstream society, and also part of the national programs that we have, and sustainable development goals. So that's we are working diligently on this aspect of it, because for country or for partners, it will not be possible to shoulder a burden forever. But when they see the prospects, then it's. I think one thing which you might find it exemplary. It's the working together between the donors, the international partners, the NGOs, the implementing agencies, different organizations. I think that has improved big deal in the past few years of the unity government. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. High Commissioner Mr. Grandi, Under Secretary General Lowcock, colleagues from the UN, ministers, deputy ministers, good morning to all of you. Once again, I want to welcome you for your joint visit to Afghanistan, and want to thank you for your support for Afghanistan in the areas of refugees, returnees, internally displaced people, and also humanitarian response. I'm glad to mention that there is a good level of coordination on the ground between UN agencies, donor countries, implementing agencies, NGOs, in the Afghan government departments and different ministries. The platforms that we have established has enabled us to work together, not only in response to the issues of IDPs and internally displaced people and returnees and refugees, but at the same time to reintegrate them into society and move towards the development phase and make them part of that phase. In this regard, especially UNHCR, UNOCHA, and other agencies have been critical in partners in working together with us to enable us to address the issues related to them. At the same time, while there are millions of our citizens outside the country, and 6 million outside and 2 million internally displaced, it's a huge number. And in spite of our own challenges, from one of our neighboring countries, we have refugees. We have hosted refugees as well. I want to thank you for supporting us in also through different platforms, including the trilateral meetings with our neighboring countries. But at the same time, I will repeat my gratitude to the host countries, Islamic Republic of Iran and Islamic Republic of Pakistan, for hosting Afghan refugees for nearly 4 decades now. Through different platforms, we are committed to comprehensive refugee response framework and support the Global Compact on Refugees in order for more responsibility sharing and durable solutions, especially in countries like Afghanistan with limited resources, with dependence on foreign assistances. It is even more critical for us to use the time, opportunity, and resources in the best way possible in order to turn a challenge into an opportunity. Returnees are really an opportunity. Amongst them, there are skilled workers, there are business communities, and there are different categories. All our ministries are tasked to, as a cross-cutting issue, to take this as an integrated part of their development agenda. And we are moving towards working it in the budget system. So gradually it is part of our budget, because from time to time we launch appeal, which again I want to thank the generous contributions of the international community, but the agencies on the ground for working together with us in launching those appeals. Our emphasis is on solution and strategies for Afghan refugees in the region, and your continued support in this respect is appreciated. At this stage, referring briefly to the political situation, we are making preparations for the parliamentary elections, district council elections, and presidential elections. We are committed to support free and fair elections and respect the role of the Independent Election Commission and Complaints Commission, and technical support from the UNAMA in UN is important, and we are grateful for that. I can assure you, both High Commissioner and Under Secretary General, that we are working together as a team here with our international partners, and that is important. It is one team. We appreciate the reforms undertaken at different levels at the UN, and one UN aim, which work is underway, will help the effectiveness further. One example of effective work, though we had a tragedy in Ghazni a few days ago, as a result of which people suffered a lot, but the response and the immediate response from the agencies which were involved in the level of coordination which took place is a good example, and there OCHA had the lead role in part of the international agencies. This year, unfortunately, the drought, which was expected but also not expected, the degree that it affected our situation and led to the displacement of the people, that was not anticipated. But the fact that there were already mechanisms in place for immediate response, that helped us, and also our relevant departments to lessen the burden which would have been there otherwise on their shoulders. I will there are different examples, so I took these two. One was the conflict, one was the natural situation, and since the drought has affected the neighboring countries of Afghanistan also severely, you have been traveling in the region, you might have seen the situation by yourself. Strengthening the regional mechanism of response is also important, that we need to focus. If there is one lesson, for example, in the earlier years when we had a situation in our part, then one of the neighboring countries like Turkmenistan would allow the herds to be taken to their soil. But since it was now in a large scale manner, it had affected the whole world, but in our part it covered a large part of this region, Central Asia and part of South Asia. We were faced with a different challenge, which that requires taking the regional cooperation into account in our future efforts. I'll suffice with this, thanking you and your colleagues on the ground, and please, Philip.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Chief Executive. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for your introduction, and I'd like to also greet ministers, deputy ministers, advisors, colleagues, many of whom are friends. For me, it's always a wonderful experience to come back to this country, to which, as many of you know, I am very personally and professionally attached. I'm here on a joint mission with Mark Lowcock, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, the head of OCHA. I would like at the outset to stress that ours is also a very deliberate gesture to indicate that unresolved humanitarian and displacement problems of Afghanistan are still very much in the focus of the international community, and if they slip sometimes, it is our job to remind them of the importance of solving these issues, even in difficult political contexts, and this is part of the reason why we're here together. Allow me to focus more on the displacement refugee side, and then I guess Mark will expand on other issues. I'd like to recall, but you know very well, that there's maybe 7 to 8 million Afghans that have been forced not to live in their homes still, either abroad in neighboring countries and further away from Afghanistan, but also as internally displaced. And we know the causes. Insecurity is still very much, when you speak to refugees abroad, a main reason for not being able to return home, or thinking that they're not able to return home. But this gets often and actually always mixed in a complex dynamic with poverty, now with drought, as we heard from the Chief Executive. And this combination obviously cannot only have one response, cannot only have single actors involved, also on the side of the international community. And this is why we always count as your main partner on refugee issues, but we count very much on the UN as a whole, represented here by the Special Representative and his deputies, so that we can be part as supporters of the government of a broader UN response. I must say that we are heartened, we are encouraged by the attention that the government has paid to this issue in its national plans, and also in its relationship with neighboring countries. And we think that this offers somehow, amidst all the challenges, an opportunity to find solution to this long-standing problem. You all know this much better than me, but next year will be the 40th anniversary of the Soviet invasion, and it will be the 40th anniversary of the first big exodus of Afghan refugees. I am sure that many of you were among those refugees or are the children of those refugees, so you have lived this as a personal experience.
Personally, I'm young enough not to remember it.
We know. So and also, you know, if I may say be a little bit personal or institutional here, that UNHCR has been with Afghans since then, since that very first day of outflow, especially in Peshawar, especially in Pakistan, and an entire generation of our colleagues has been forged by working with Afghan refugees. So we are very attached, and as an institution we will continue to be, but we also want to be detached from that eventually and end this very long problem. Without solution there will be no peace. I'd like to also flag that this is an important time for the refugee responses globally. The General Assembly of the United Nations will establish soon, hopefully, but I'm pretty sure soon, a global compact on refugees. This is the result of deliberations 2 years ago in New York. And Afghanistan has played a very important role. You may or may not know that you are chairing our board for this year, our executive committee, and in that capacity, and also as an expert country in this matter, you have provided important contribution. You have requested to be one of the 14 countries around the world that somehow pilots broader approaches in solving displacement in partnership between humanitarian and development actors. This provides us additional elements, additional space for solution. Let me spend a few words to commend, Mark will speak more about this, but commend efforts that you are carrying out internally, here, domestically, in Afghanistan to address displacement. The fact that return and reintegration of people coming back, be they displaced or refugees, the fact that you have involved them in your development planning, in your national priorities, is very encouraging to us. When I was here almost 20 years ago, we had big discussions, but now this is becoming a reality, and I think that this is something we really want to commend. The fact that, as I learned yesterday, just a few days ago, you concluded important legislative work on land issues related to displaced people with presidential approval is a very important step forward. I don't need to tell you, but we really want to salute that as an important step forward in finding a solution to this problem. UNHCR will continue to support the initial reintegration of people. We have done this for decades, and we have, special focus on vulnerable people, on protection aspects. We, together with the government, we monitor, together with the Ministry of Refugees and Repatriation, we monitor that. But clearly, durable solution, durable, sustainable reintegration can only be achieved as a collective effort, not only on the part of the United Nations, and here we work under the leadership of UNAMA and the mission, but also on the part of the government. And it is very good to see that all the relevant ministries and line ministries are gathered here. And really, I would like to encourage you to work together and to contribute to the solution, to making return sustainable. This is, this country for too many times has seen a cycle of solution and fresh displacement. And I think we need to break that so that the problem is solved in a durable manner. And this can only be achieved through your leadership as a government. And we look at that, and we look at you as, we look at us as supporters to this. You have now entered this, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the Comprehensive Refugee Response Framework. This is a new model of refugee response globally. And the main element of it is that it is humanitarian, but it reaches out also to development actors. In Pakistan, Pakistan is also a country that has requested to be part of this approach. The World Bank has, for example, already allotted very substantive resources to respond to the protracted refugee presence, not only for refugees, but also for host communities. And we want to link that with what is being done here. Here, it is not a refugee response. This is a reintegration challenge. But I think that we need to use the momentum that this framework has created globally, around the world, in many refugee hosting countries, to prolong it, to extend it to inside Afghanistan, and to mobilize the necessary development resources that are needed to sustain reintegration. And I'm very happy of the response of the World Bank, for example, and other developmental institutions. We need, through the efforts of the UN as a whole, to pursue that even more decisively. And finally, and most importantly, I would like to flag that we are very encouraged also by the increased cooperation of the Afghan governments with the governments of the two biggest host countries, the ones that you, Chief Executive, have thanked a few minutes ago, Pakistan and Iran. This is crucial. because it is important that beyond the political challenges that inevitably occur in your bilateral relationships with these countries. I mean, there's no secret about that, and I think this is part of the challenges of international relation in a complex region like this one. I think it is important to keep the focus on the fact that all three countries are seeking a solution to this problem of Afghan displacement. I was in Iran before coming here, and I have to tell you that I am quite impressed by the fact that a country that is coming under renewed pressure internationally, sanctions and so forth, has been able so far at least to stay the course in carrying out very inclusive policies in respect of Afghan refugees. The decree of the Supreme Leader of 2015 to give universal access to education to all Afghan children, irrespective of their status, is a very forward-looking and humanitarian gesture, which they are upholding. And they're trying to make progress in health issues as well by extending the health insurance to at least those that hold the refugee card, the Amayesh card. But what I think is very important in Iran is that they are also making a deliberate effort to regularize the Afghan population. Some have Amayesh card, they're recognized as refugees. Others, an increasing number, have passports. And I would really like to encourage, I spoke to the foreign minister this morning, to accelerate the issuance of passports to undocumented Afghans in Iran. And others that are completely undocumented also are now being dealt with in a manner that tries to protect them to the extent possible, because undocumented Afghans are more exposed to the volatility of the situation, and when times are difficult, they are also sometimes, as you know, subject to deportation and to prohibition to access work and services, and it is a difficult situation. So pending the repatriation, which we all hope would be the solution, these are important efforts. And likewise, on the Pakistani side, the fact that you have now started a much broader dialogue with Pakistan around the APAPs, but that the refugee issue is part of that dialogue, we see this as extremely positive. And because we see that the traditional efforts that we have carried out through our trilateral fora, together with the Ministry of Refugees and Repatriation, are now supported and expanded by a linkage with the political process. Of course, one thing is not political, the rest is, but I think it's important that the political process supports solutions for displacement. And we know what solutions are on the Pakistani side. There again is to impress on Pakistan that there should be no undue push, no involuntary return, no precipitated return of too many people. This would put too much of a strain on the state building process here. There has to be an extension, therefore, of the proof of registration cards for a predictable period of time, not 3 months at a time. And there should be also there a documentation and regularization effort which is going on and which you are participating, which is positive. I see this, after many years, as a window of opportunity to move towards solution. It may sound a bit counterintuitive. I hope it doesn't sound naive. I know this country. I think one has to manage expectations, but I think it is important to look at it as an opportunity to work on, because, like I said, there will be no peace if this issue is not resolved. If the situation of Afghans in the region and beyond does not move from being a refugee situation dictated by conflict and violence to a more normal migration situation, which is of benefit to those countries and to Afghanistan through remittances and in other ways. So we need to progressively shift, maintaining the protection space for those that have protection issues, but we need to move in that direction. And I think that you're entering a challenging period in the country with elections and with other political challenges, but I think that looking at the medium and long term, I see positive developments. I count on your cooperation. be assured that UNHCR will continue to be on your side as a partner, as a contributor, and as an advocate for solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner Grandi, for your remarks and for your support. Under Secretary General Lokak, please.
Well, thank you very much. And just to add a couple of points, to be back here again, it's great to see you all, including some colleagues I've worked with for a long time. Really nice to catch up with old friends. And I mean, to build really on the other humanitarian-related issues beyond the refugee issues, which I'd be really grateful for the opportunity to explore with you a bit during the round table. I mean, there's two sorts of them really. The first is the conflict-related issues, the displacement and the dealing with the tragedies like Ghazni, as you mentioned, Dr. Abdullah. And we will always be available. The humanitarian coordinator, Toby and his team, and Tarek and my colleagues here will always be available to you when it sadly is necessary to deal with those things. But we're also keen to help you work towards solutions in this space, the internal displacement arising from the conflict as well, and on the other sort of crisis that sometimes or challenge you have to deal with, which you mentioned too, the drought-related challenges. And the whole theme of the United Nations in these areas under Antonio Guterres' leadership, which probably will have talked to you about when he came, is to try to join up efforts to relieve immediate suffering with efforts to provide longer-term solutions, and especially to join up the humanitarian development family inside the UN to provide better support to the countries under whose leadership we're working. And particularly when it comes to the drought, the underlying reason why a drought causes a problem is, of course, because of poverty. And the most important thing that the international community, I think, needs to help you with is the thing I used to come here a lot and discuss in my previous incarnation, which is development and building the economy and creating the jobs so that people are more resilient. And when droughts happen, which they will, they're easier to cope with. Now, when we have a moment where there is a drought and you're attracting additional support, there is meaningful additional money coming in now to help you deal with the drought. In a way, the most important issue is how to do that in a way which contributes to longer-term solutions. One thing we would want to avoid and not leave you with the problem of is where people, for example, are displaced by the drought, those people becoming a sort of permanent group of people who continuously need assistance, and the better we are able to help people in their homes, in their places of origin, to help them get through the period of the drought, and that's the approach we'd like to take, including the way we use the additional money. And if we could understand the government's plan for that, you of course play a very important role on the drought response technical committee and the sort of coordinating agency's chief executive, I know, but the line ministries have an important role to play, and the Ministry of Economy has an important role to play, and the Ministry of Finance has an important role to play. If we could work out how on the international side we can be supporting you towards solutions, and understand your perspective here on that, and then maybe take some of those ideas to Geneva, where these issues will be discussed. And I know Filippo is looking forward to the side event on people issues, moving people issues, and I'm looking forward to the side event on drought and food insecurity. Then we can make that a positive contribution to the whole Geneva conference, hopefully. So that would be the thing from my point of view I'd be really keen to get out of the round table.
Thank you.